Hello everyone and welcome to another video. What is it about today? I don't really know. I have to get some videos recorded. And the hardest thing right now is just to start. I have so many ideas on my hard drive, but I don't feel excited about them. I mean, I know some of those ideas are pretty good in my opinion, but sometimes it's just far more rewarding to me to write something new, which I am really excited about, and not to just learn to play something that I already played a few months ago. So, yeah. The first thing, I guess, is just to power up everything. So, let's just switch on the board and the PC. Yeah, sometimes just playing around and just jamming a bit will help to set the mood. But at the moment, it's just so hard to really get into the groove. As soon as I've recorded a few videos, it's pretty easy. I can be laid back and just edit the videos over the course of a few weeks, depending on how many videos I recorded. And during that time, I don't feel any pressure. So playing the guitar just feels far more freely. It's not that I just push myself into playing guitar. It's more that I play guitar anyway on a regular basis, but the idea in mind that I have to record something, that's just the thing. There are just so many sessions I just play to myself, and some of them are just post worthy, I think, but I don't record them. And it's just a pain setting up the lights and the camera every time that I pick up the guitar. So when I decide, okay, I just want to record another video, that's just the point where I feel like, okay, today something has to be done. So yeah, I don't know. That's more improvised video. Because as you may know, scripting isn't really a thing for me. I have to get myself together and script some more, but for the most part, it's like with guitar playing, I don't plan that much. It's more about how I feel that day. Let's just go quickly to the signal chain. I go into the polytune. From there, I run to, I think, the pitchfork, special cranker, Odyssey, into the compressor, because I like my compressors after my drive section. Some people run the compressor before that, but when I think about amps, let's turn the camera. Yeah. When I use a clean amp, and that's mostly what I do, I just use a clean amp as my pedal platform, or in my case, the ACS1. Then if I would use a tube amp, then the tube amp would add the compression, but my drive pedals are before the amp. And so I don't want to have compression before my drive section. When you have pedals like the Special Cranker or the Odyssey, those are pretty sensitive to your picking dynamics. And that's just a good thing because it feels far more amp-like. But when I run a compressor before my gain stage, before my drives, then it just kills the dynamics before I run into my overdrive. And for me personally, that doesn't make any sense. So I just run my compressor after my drives. So the compressor helps to level out the overall signal, but my picking dynamics still have an impact on how much the pedals will distort. So it's a squish as, oh, and I forgot, after the polytune, I go into the 29 pedals Una, which became an essential part to my rig. And adding some harmonics and some lows, yeah, the overall guitar signal just benefits from it to a large part. After the Squish S, I'm currently running Fable. Fable is a mono granular pedal, and from there I go mono into the newest edition, which is the Butterfly Effect Double, and which is another granular pedal. I'm really a sucker for granular pedals. And from there I go stereo out into Mood, which is connected to the favorite switch. So I have at the moment 4 presets instead of just having 2 inside Mood. From there I go into the DD500, which delivers all of my delays, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm currently waiting for the Timeline MX to come out. I really hope it doesn't take that long, because I would be really excited about this. And at that point, I think I would not think about it anymore, just hit immediately purchase, because I don't think there are much delays which are as good as this. I think maybe the Maris LVX or the Strymon stuff. From there, I go into my plate reverb. Not into my plate, into my Illumin reverb, which is every reverb in there really feels like an actual reverb. When I turn that on, it sounds like I'm actually sitting in a room with my guitar. From there, I go into the ACS1, which I run Vox amps from with some IRs by Bogren, into the 22500 looper, into my DI. And what the DI allows me to do is I can run stereo into my interface, but I have a through output, and I can sum that to mono. So I can connect my amp to the DI and sum everything to mono, or play stereo into my interface without really changing much of the connections. So that's it for my board. And here I have the Poly and Step as my drum machine, and that runs parallel. That has its own dedicated inputs, which run into the Scarlett 8i6. And I'm really thinking about upgrading that, because 2 more inputs could be great. I have a stream from time to time, and I use one of the inputs in the front for my mic, and the back is just, there are no inputs left on the back, because 2 stereo singles connected takes away 4 of the inputs on the back side. As far as my DAW goes, I run Reaper. Okay, let's just start recording. So I was halfway into the edit of this video, not really this video, the previous version of this video, when I realized that the screen capture didn't work at all. So I have to do everything over again. But since the last one felt pretty unstructured, I think this time it's going to be a bit better. Now I could show you what I do inside my DAW, especially with Guitar Rig. I thought about guitarists on YouTube a while ago. Just ask myself how the people can come up with such a pristine guitar sound. And I never really thought about how much processing can go into guitar. With mixing and sometimes mastering and doing everything inside the box. It just, when you do everything on yourself and you start mixing all of those guitars and drums and you use plugins, then at one point I just decided, okay, I can build my bass sound just around that process of mixing and get my guitar as mix ready as possible, and as close to the finished sound that I have in my head as I possibly can. And that was just the reason to start a whole signal chain, which is written into a template of mine. So let me just show you how my guitar rig looks like. When I disengage guitar rig, you can already hear. Let's just disable the special cranker. It's pretty quiet. And with guitar rig engaged, and that's just a far healthier level. I could just crank the input gain on my looper, which is something like an end of chain master volume for my pedal board. But to get at that point, it would start to clip. So I keep the level rather low just to not introduce any noise. Because as you can hear, when I use both pickups, noise is totally cancelled. But if I'm going to the bridge or to the neck, and that's just due to my PC sitting there in the corner. When I record videos, I usually turn the guitar into this direction, so you can hear it gets quieter, but as soon as I move, I introduce some noise. Here in Guitar Rig, I have a few things going on. For one part, when I can't reach the level that I need just to hear everything clearly, especially when I run drums in parallel, I could use that little module, which is just there to add some more volume. But we don't need that at the moment because the level is already pretty healthy. And the next container here that's for mid-side processing. And I just started to experiment with that. What that allows me to do is just compress the center signal of my guitar, and the stereo sides can be processed independent from the mids. So I could just add something like an EQ. But since that's something that I just started experimenting with, it doesn't make much of a difference if I just disengage everything in there. I just add some reverb to give it some more stereo width. When I add the Li2A compressor, you can hear it compresses the center signal and just gives it a bit more punch. I could just raise the highs and pull out some of the lows for the for the stereo signal. And for that, I could just turn the sides to solo. And you hear just the left or right signal. As you can hear, that just affects the far left or right signals. But I like to use everything very, very subtle. The next module is split mix, and split mix I use only for one reason, and that's just to pan the left side 100% left and the right side 100% right. So yeah, that's just something I just set and forget. I haven't touched that in years. I could have some control over the stereo spread inside the track manager in Reaper, but since I have it here, it's just enough for me. It's as wide as I want it to be, and that's just enough for me. And after I run through that, I run through another compressor, which at this point is my third stage compressor. I have the Squish S on my board as my first compressor. Then I compress the mids quite a bit, not quite a bit, just subtle. And then I use an 1176 style compressor as my end of chain compressor. And that just adds a bit more weight to the lower notes. When I just play a chord like that and engage the 1176, it just gives a little bit more warmth and adds just a little bit more bottom. As I've already said, it's not that I overdo much of the processing. It's everything's just subtle. But when you have 3 instances of compression, which are all pretty subtle, then that just adds up. If I would just take off all the compression, squish as included, then my guitar sounds like this. And I hope you can hear that it gets just warmer and a bit more rounded, and it just feels fuller. I don't think that it's necessary to use 3 compressors. I don't think I would buy separate compressor plugins. But in Guitar Rig, I have all the compressors that I want. So let's say I have the LA2A, the 1176. I can use that compressor too. I have some more dynamics. I have a bus compressor, and there are just 4 more compressors. And as you can see, there are some more IQs, like Solid EQ, for example. And you have some more filters, reverbs, amplifiers, which I don't use at this point, and some cabinets. And for the reverb, for example, I really love that round reverb. And I try to come as close as I can with the Lumen. It's not a 1-to-1 copy, but I think it gets close. And the round sounds like this. And that's what the Lumen sounds like. But I use the Lumen rather subtle. And the round one is a little bit warmer at this point, but as I said, I just want to get myself in the same ballpark and not do a 1-to-1 copy. I think if Native Instruments ever builds a round reverb pedal which has these 3 algorithms, then I would purchase that one for sure. At one point, they released that plugin as a single version. Yeah, there it is. But inside Guitar Rig, it's already in there. So getting Guitar Rig, think was one of the best purchases I ever did. If I am not really happy with the cab, for example, that I use, I just disengage the cab on the ACS1 and use an IR loader inside Guitaric, or use some of their own cabs in there. So yeah, that's it for Guitaric. I think there's everything engaged by this point. So at this point, a lot of tone shaping is happening inside Reaper. So it's not like building the same board and you will have that sound. It's far more which is happening. And for example, when I saw people on YouTube just demoing guitar amplifiers, and I was constantly just questioning myself, like I said before, how does they get such a good sound? And one example is just reverb. And that was something that I haven't had a plan, that it's just such an important part. When I play guitar and you play something really generic like, then that doesn't sound that bad. But adding a reverb, not just that it sounds better, a lot of the things, a lot of my guitar sound is really, it feels better. And if it feels like you are in an actual room playing guitar, that obviously feels much more realistic than just standing in a dead sounding room. That's it. Because there are no dead rooms. When you play guitar inside a normal room, then you will have some echoes and some representation of the room size inside your guitar sound. And just adding reverb is just my way of replicating realness in that regard. As I've said, special crankers there to mimic in tube amp at breakup. Squish S adds the tube compression in the end, and reverb adds a real room and further tone shaping in Guitaric. So yeah, it's really a lot which goes in shaping guitar sound if you really will take it too far, like I do. But since those plugins are rather cheap, or some of them are just for free, it's just so easy, and it's really, really fun to dive deeper into that. After my guitar, every time I use a normal equalizer. This one is by Softtube. And at this point, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But when I loop and I have, let's say, just 4 layers going on, and I start to just improvise without recording, so we have 5 layers going on, then the frequencies just start to build up and build up. And for the most part, that results in boomy lower mids or in too much bass for my likings, and it's just a low frequency rumble. And I just like to cut that off a bit and leave that space in the low frequencies to the bass drum, for example. And when I mimic bass with my guitar like this, then that's already a pretty hefty amount of bass. And that added over all the bass frequencies which are already inside my guitar sound. That just helps to tame it a bit and make everything more audible. On my master track, I have the Ferric TTS, which is a tape saturation plugin. The dynamics compress the sound and the saturation just adds more saturation. And I really like that to glue everything together. Now I will show you what I do with Step. Step, for example, with the generic preset that I did, sounds like this, which is too quiet, but I run my pedal board and Step into the back of my interface, so I don't have control over the input gain as long as I just use the knobs on the units itself. As I said, I just try to not run everything too hot into my DAW, to not introduce noise with further editing and further mixing. And Step will sound like this. Let's just raise the volume a bit. And let's just engage preamp. Just raise the output. And the difference is pretty hefty. The next thing I like to do with something like Poly and Step, but I also use with things such as drum plugins like Get Good Drums, for example, is I run it through a Reverb, which is also by Softube. I'm really a fan of Softube plugins. They really sound great. And I use the TSAR Reverb just to add, just color it a bit brighter, which just helps to get something more out of the hi-hats. And it sounds like this. Let's start with a normal sized room. Neutral. But as you can hear, listen to the hi-hats. It's just a bit brighter. And as I said, mixing for me is a very, very subtle thing, but it adds. Without it, it sounds like this. And with a plugin, it sounds like this. And for me, that's just far more fun just to come up with ideas and just to jam if I have an already mostly finished sound in my head. And if I engage some of my effects, let's say pretty much a standard sound for me. Let's just engage. Let's just play something with Step. Yeah, that's just an example. And if I would record a session with this sound, then I wouldn't have to do much. I could just go through all of my plugins, which I think that would take up to an hour, or maybe or maybe 2 hours, because these days it's just so easy to get all of those plugins, and some of them are free, some of them are rather expensive, but there are a lot of cheaper alternatives. And yeah, but that's really what I use most of the time. Those are my go-to mix plugins. And as you saw, that's just what I use on my drums. It's guitar rig and EQ and all that goes with the drums through master track. So yeah, that's it. I hope it was not as chaotic as I feel. If you made it to the end of the video, I'm really thankful for your patience, and maybe see you in the next video. So I really hope you have a nice day, and bye.